stop making major decisions in isolation. Bring development, operations, commercial, and ownership goals into the same conversation. So if you are making decisions in silos, which many people are doing, you're almost certainly leaking value somewhere.
Welcome everyone. My guest today is Matt Hughes. He's the CEO and founder of Accommodate Consulting. Matt spent over 20 years at Marriott International, most recently as a vice president and owner strategy of EMEA. Welcome to the show.
Keith, lovely to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm looking forward to having a good chat with you today.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. So talk me through where it all started. 20 years at Marriott is no small thing. Your role as VP of owner strategy for the entire region is a serious position. So what was the moment you looked at everything, you just thought, you know what, let's just go off and do this on my own and start something fresh?
Well, yeah, let me give you a little bit of context of what I'm about and what I do. So I work with hotel owners and investors primarily to help them make better decisions across the full life cycle of an asset. So that's from all the way from development and structuring through to operations, growth, and finally exit. So as you said there, Keith, I spent 20 years with Marriott, most recently leading owner strategy across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, which gave me a clear view, a clear perspective of how hotel assets create value and where that value can get lost, and that's pretty critical. What I saw repeatedly was that major decisions, big decisions, were often made in silos. So that's, it's development over here, operations over here, commercial, finance, all handled separately. And most of them actually talking, different languages, different industry languages. And when those decisions aren't aligned, performance really does suffer. So what I've built through Accommodate Consulting and specifically through the C.L.A.R.I.T.Y system is it's a way of helping owners bring structure and alignment to those decisions. You mentioned about leaving Marriott and yeah, 20 years is a long time in anyone's money. And the company and the industry has changed so much. It gave me the opportunity to really live that and see patterns and recognize those patterns. And what I found about myself was that I have a desire for speed, for things to happen quickly, because I see owners and investors where they're successful, they're nimble, they make quick decisions. And a big corporation moves very, very slowly. By setting up my own business, it gives me the opportunity to build my own intellectual property and take that to the market. So yeah, I guess I kind of realized that everything I'd learned, I could apply it faster and more directly outside the system.
I get that. Yeah, it's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, isn't there, with a big organization? You've got an idea, you've got to go through so many levels for approvals, etc. At least when you're your own boss, you can see a market change, you can just act on it immediately and can see an opportunity. Sometimes opportunities can be lost with these big organizations.
Completely. There is bureaucracy, there is a consensus, everything. It's like a big ship. The bigger that ship is, the longer it takes to turn around. And that, that can be frustrating. And hey, every decision you make in business is not going to be right, but you've got to be able to make those decisions quickly, especially if they are bad decisions. Make them quickly, learn from it. And then, I didn't leave Marriott because the system was broken. I just felt that I could move faster outside of it.
Excellent. I love that. And you mentioned, you just touched gently on the C.L.A.R.I.T.Y system, which is a registered IP, and that tells me something that you've built something serious here. So practically, what's the actual problem that system solves?
Yeah, so I talked earlier on a little bit about patterns, and I could see living in this big organization and dealing with all these different people, these different patterns, these challenges that happened when decisions were disconnected. So I started developing this framework, and it's certainly built over time. And it supports owners' thinking over time of their asset life cycle. And the outcome really is alignment and better decisions. Let me make that real for you. Let me give you an example. With a hotel, you have maybe, a £50 million hotel. It's a big asset, it's a big investment. And as part of having a hotel, there is a renovation that you have to do. So there's the timing when that renovation takes place versus the commercial reality of really when it should take place. And if you've got a brand, a big hotel brand, and you've got a franchise agreement or a management agreement that commits you to making this substantial capital investment at, say, year 7 and 14 of the life cycle, so what you term your soft renovation and your hard renovation, that's fine, that's absolutely fine. But what if your plan is to flip that asset in 7 years? So you plan to sell it at 7 years. Are you going to spend that money, that, £10 million to bring the asset up to date if your plan is to exit that year? So it's super important at the beginning of any relationship, and that goes across industries, across life in general, that you're clear on what your motivations and expectations are from day one. And in the hotel world, that's for the hotel owners, that's the brands, the operators, they all need to be clear. They all need to have clarity. And so, the clarity system, it drives value and it gets rid of confusion, which in essence, confusion destroys clarity.
That's fascinating. One of the things that struck me on our pre-call that we had before the podcast here is that you described your role at Marriott as always being on the owner's side of the table. So understanding what they actually need, not just what the brand needs. So what's the most common gap that you see between what owners think and the need and what the data and experience actually tells you?
Well, over my time, I dealt with thousands of owners. I was responsible for over 1,500 owners across close to 80 countries. And this term owner is so broad. And it's interesting once you scratch the surface and you get to understand you've got owners. This could be somebody, an owner investor that actually owns the real estate, or it could be a landlord. You have sometimes people called third parties that sit in between the owner and the brand owners, and they're franchise management companies. They are the people who actually operate the asset. So they all have different perspectives. They all have these different motivations and expectations. A lot of the owners and the investors, their perceived need is mostly more about more data, more reporting, because they come from the world of real estate and dealing with big money and financial institutions where everything is about clarity and being able to forecast, and it's about the numbers and so on. In all reality, the real need is more about the alignment and the interpretation of that data, because the impact usually is missequenced decisions because that information has been incorrectly interpreted. These owners, and I deal with owners on a day-to-day basis, owners don't need more data. What they need is better decisions. Most of the problems that they encounter during the life cycle of an asset, they're not necessarily operational, they're structural, to do with the way that agreement has been set up. And this comes back to talking about the clarity system, where we start to begin with about the contract and the context of that asset before any of the operation starts at all, because that's where most of the value of that asset sits.
And then broaching onto the subject of AI, there's a lot of noise about AI at the moment in all industries, and everyone's talking about it, but few people are actually using it in a grounded sort of practical way. You clearly are. You mentioned that you took the Cornell certification in AI strategy, spent 3 months mapping out friction across your entire operation, and now you run agents for specific tasks. So what does that actually look like for day to day inside your business? What would you say that other founders who are either ignoring it or are they getting swept up in the hype? What's your take on it?
There is a lot of hype, isn't there? I mean, it's absolutely everywhere. I talk at conferences, and I go to conferences, and you look at the agenda, and everything is AI. It's as if people think this is the silver bullet. AI is not new. AI really was developed in the 90s, and there's been lots of iterations, lots of hibernations where the infrastructure isn't there, but now it's to a point where it's open source. The speed and the availability and the cost is available to everyone. I think my advice to people would be calm down. It's not the silver bullets. Follow what I've done. Use an example. I started with education. You've really, really got to start with your people, start with your data, and really clarify what AI is and what it isn't. It's this idea of mapping friction. Now, I did this across my day, on a business and personal level, because I think that's really important. If you find these areas of friction and you can understand them, and you can then build tools around these problems, I think in all reality, what's happening at the moment, there's so many vendors out there selling their wares that people are getting, oh, that's a wonderful UI, that looks wonderful. But behind the scenes, what is it doing? What is the problem that it's looking to actually solve?
Yeah.
And the big factor, and I think you and I probably spoke about this last week, is that human judgment remains key here. You cannot take out the human element. The human agency in this is really critical, because whilst AI can help you get a lot of data, it cannot make decisions for you. And I guess where people get it wrong, Keith, is that most people start with the tool. I've stepped back and I'm starting with the problem. So it's about leverage, not replacement.
Yeah. And there's dozens upon dozens of tools out there. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with the tools. And,
Yes.
One tool, and if you look at just a basic, well, not basic, but LLMs, you look at Claude, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and they all, do different things. And all of a sudden there'll be an update, and all of a sudden Claude's better at doing one thing than ChatGPT, and then the next week it'll overtake it again, and you're just like, oh, jump to here, jump to there, and I think work out what you need to do.
100%,
work out what you need to do.
It's a human instinct that people are looking for the easy way, the easy solution. One tool that is going to do it all for them. That doesn't exist. You made that and you're going to make your billions overnight. It doesn't. So you've really, rather than doing that and trying to focus on a million tools, find out what the problem is. It's like when I speak to owners about their hotels, where they really need to focus at the moment. The key 4 pillars would be data, focusing on getting their clean data, and that's no mean feast. Secondly, is the guardrails, the governance around what they're going to do, what they can do, and what they can't do. Thirdly, would be around their integration, their APIs. If people are relying on manual uploads and CSV files, if they're not directly connected through APIs, they're not ready yet. And then finally, and most importantly, is their people and their training, because if they can't get their people on board, then it'll fail. 95% of AI rollouts within big corporations fail because the people and the operational is not ready. They're not AI ready.
Yeah, bringing them all up to speed, because like you say, at the backbone of it needs to be human driven. Yes. You can't rely on to run itself, and then you just sit in the background and put your feet up, have a cup of tea, and let it do its job.
Completely. And the day that happens, we're all in trouble.
I think so, and I don't want it to happen. I want to be in control of it. It's something that will help speed up tasks, so you can be more productive and think on a high level, rather than getting sucked into stuff that you know that you could do day in, day out in your sleep, but still needs to be done. That's where AI, if you can get AI to program it, set up agents to do that element, and then you can think more holistically above the business.
100%.
That's where I feel like it sits. And then going back to your business with your personal brand, because that's very much sort of the driver behind your operation here. So, and you've been very deliberate about this, with your LinkedIn posting, you're speaking at conferences, you're co-authoring a white paper series for forums. So you're a founder-led consultancy where you are genuinely the product. So how much of that is strategic, and how much would you say that's something you just enjoy to do?
I would say is a combination of both, because I am very strategic by my very nature. My degree is in planning and management. I am everything has to be logical. Everything has to be as elegant and simple as possible. And of course, I spent 20 years working for one of the biggest brand companies in the world. So I understand the power and the value of brand, because with that comes credibility and trust. And that's what I've spent the first 14 months of my business focusing on, because in the past, I would lead with Marriott. I work for Marriott, and people understand that. It's a company that's grown over close to 100 years, and with that comes the trust. So I can't do that anymore. I don't work for Marriott. I had to build that. And so once that strategic element was there, then we look at the sort of the personal element, and that's about me and defining my why. So bringing clarity of thinking to it. So when I sat down and I wrote my why, it was all about eliminating inefficiency and complexity, and then creating these scalable solutions that empower better decisions, stronger relationships, and real results. And the outcome of that then is inbound work. I don't have to go out there knocking on doors, because the people that I want to speak to are not the people who want to be sold to. You can't cold call that. It's about strategic introductions, and then people then sort of coming to me. People buy how you think before they buy what you do.
Yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned about LinkedIn and profile, and that's really, really important. And segueing off, you were talking about AI. One of the things that AI cannot build and not take from you is that personal brand. But you've got to be consistent, because that consistency builds trust, but in the right way. Because what you can't do is have this visibility without substance, because that's just noise then.
Yeah. There's a lot of that out there at the moment. And so it's like you say, the type of content you're putting out there, the trust building, it's vital, it's critical. Having that human voice behind it. And
I find it quite cathartic as well, because I encourage people in the digital age that we live in, actually writing and putting pen to paper. Of course, yes, you're putting it out there in the digital sphere, but I think it's super cathartic and gets you to clear your mind and be focused.
Yeah, something I need to do more of, I think, for sure. You spoke about Marriott. Obviously, it's a massive brand, it's a multinational brand. You're UK based. Most of your client work is coming across Europe. And what's the landscape now, and your read on the UK market as opposed to the continent? And where's the next opportunity? Where's the current opportunity?
Opportunity tends to sit where change is happening. And I find that the UK is a very mature hotel market. They know what they're doing. They've got a lot of professionals, but then there's a lot of competition comes with that. And with the state of the economy that we're in, everyone is really looking at cost and efficiencies, and that's great. But the reality is, a lot of time was spent in my career building relationships and momentum in Europe. And so what I found is that, it's not that the UK is bad and Europe is good. A lot of my contacts and the work that I'm doing at the moment is actually based in Europe. And I feel that if we talk of Europe as a continent, the opportunity there is vast. So when I was at Marriott, we always used to compare with the US, because obviously the lodging market over there, the hotel market, is significant. There's a hotel on every corner, a branded asset. But actually, if you look at the continent of Europe as a whole, the opportunity here is even greater. The hotel market is bigger, but what you find is that over 50% of the market in Europe is unbranded. And so if you were to work with these owners to leverage the strength and the opportunity that franchising brings, the hotel market opportunity in Europe is far larger than the US. In fact, I wrote a white paper about it back in last year. And also, to give you a bit more context, when you're talking to owners and investors in real estate, they're usually looking at various asset classes. They're not just looking at hotels, they're looking at residential, they're looking at logistics, and they're benchmarking, why should I go into hospitality versus some of these others? Hospitality stands on its own, is different, because if you think, if you were to buy a big warehouse that you would use for logistics, for storage and so on, you would sign like a 5-year lease. And once that is done, a 5-year, 10-year lease, once that's done, the price is locked in. And so this comes back to my value piece at the beginning. You can't do much with that. There's nothing you can do. In hotels, you get to change your rate every night. Sometimes now with AI, you're optimizing your rate structure, your inventory pricing 4 times a day, maybe even more now.
Yeah.
So it's very unique.
Mm.
So yeah, to your original point about where the opportunity sits, it's hotel, and for me, it's Europe. I think there's so much still to do.
And looking at your business and where you're going with it, scaling and exiting,
Yes.
you're planning on building a track record, prove the model, bring people in, and eventually look to build something that you can exit and sell within 24 months. Is that your sort of working horizon? What does the next phase look like for your business?
So, yeah, I mean, you need to know where you're going in order to get there. And so I've broken my forward trajectory into 3 phases. So phase one would be, the clarity and positioning piece, which I'm coming towards the end of now. I know what I'm doing and I know where I'm going. Number two, really, which I'm about to embark on is the proof and delivery. So it's the contracts which I'm signing, the work that I'm doing, which I will be judged accordingly based on the success of that. Because in all reality, it's whatever you've achieved recently that your next customer is going to judge you on. So some really exciting projects was I'm just about to embark on, which is great because it's given me something to really get my teeth into to further develop my intellectual property. Then I will segue into phase three, which will be selective scaling. So, I've got to build that proof before I build headcount. And the goal, as you said, eventually, of course, I have a family. It would be lovely to get to the point where I can scale the business, but to exit. But in order to do that, it's further development to happen, because at the moment, because of the industry we're in, it's all about relationships. And so there's so much value that's invested in the relationships that I have. So I need to scale first of all. So the goal is to build something that works beyond me.
One last thing, if you're a hotel owner or investor listening in at the moment, right now to this podcast, who feels potentially they're making decisions in the dark without the right framework and the right people around them, what's the one thing you tell them to do differently starting tomorrow?
Stop making major decisions in isolation. Bring development, operations, commercial, and ownership goals into the same conversation. So if you are making decisions in silos, which many people are doing, you're almost certainly leaking value somewhere.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Matt, this has been an absolutely brilliant conversation. So thanks so much for joining on today. Fantastic experience and great to reflect on it. So I really appreciate your time.
Lovely. Likewise, Keith. Thanks for the opportunity. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers.